Give me one moment, please.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I'm ready. Good evening,
You
everyone.
may start. Yep,
Okay.
you may start, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn the telephones down. I'm sorry. Good evening, everybody. Tonight is Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting. We have three resolutions on our agenda for tonight. First, I would like to take attendance for the members of Public Works and Transportation. I think Loretta Walsh is excused with absence. Next is Councilwoman Linda Gray on. Present. Council member Nathan Fields on.
Present.
Next, I have Councilwoman Begita Fields.
Present.
Next, we have Councilmember James Spadola.
Present.
Next, we have our Council President, Ernest Trippy Congo.
Here.
Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go straight to our agenda for tonight. First, we have a resolution. Do we have any other members on from council that aren't council members? That aren't committee members, I'm sorry. Okay. We're going to go straight to the agenda. First, we have a resolution to authorize and approve the Second Amendment of a lease between the City of Wilmington and Comcast Cable Communications, LLC, Comcast Communications, Inc., regarding a building and utility shed at 1400 Concord Pike. Do we have someone from the administration to speak towards this resolution? I'm sorry.
Yes, Kelly Williams, Commissioner of Public Works.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Williams. You may proceed. Thank you.
Sure. This resolution is Second Amendment looking to extend the term of a current lease for 5 additional years, beginning February 15th, 2022, with the option to extend the lease for 1 additional 5-year term. Thereafter, it increases the rent payable by Comcast to the city under the lease to $48,381 for the first year of the Second Amendment, and increase it by 3% annually for each year thereafter. Basically, Comcast has a small little shed at the Porter Reservoir that they use for their television equipment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any council members, committee members that would like to ask any questions? Councilwoman Gray, I see your hand up.
Thank you. My only question is 3% enough? the annual increase over the next years is 3%. I guess the market median or share for this type of thing?
It is, we believe that it's reasonable. I mean, they take no time or space or effort on our part. And 3%, to us is a fair and reasonable price.
Thank you.
We have any other committee members with any questions? Okay, seeing no hands, do we have any individuals from the public that would like to ask a question or speak? Okay, this is a resolution, so it doesn't have to be voted out, but it will be heard on the February 3rd agenda. Next, we have a resolution approving the Office of Economic Development grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation, Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Stabilities and programs to support infrastructure and improving along the South Market Street. Do we have someone here from Economic Development to speak towards this grant?
Yes, Madam Chair, the Office of Economic Development is present. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I would also like to say it was a pleasure to go out with you two guys today and just catch up on individuals who interested in bringing some more business to the city of Wilmington. But I'm not going to get into all of that right now. But thanks again for inviting me out to meet them guys. So I'm going to let you go ahead and talk towards this
Our pleasure,
resolution.
Madam Chair. And the second resolution relates actually to our visit. So we'll circle back to that. But regarding the current resolution on the RAISE grant, I want to set a little bit of context on this grant, which is funded and operated by the U.S. Department of Transportation. So it's a federal grant, and we've actually applied to this program 3 times, given how competitive it is. And that's illustrated by the history of this grant. So since 2009, this program has awarded more than $3.8 billion in federal funding for infrastructure improvements. It leveraged $6.8 billion in non-federal funding. But I wanted to point out 345 projects were funded out of 10,400 applications received. It's roughly a 3% funding rate. So our office tried for 3 years, and finally in this 3rd year, we were awarded the grant, but we have not yet executed on any grant agreements. We first wanted to come to this committee and present in front of the council before proceeding. So the eligible applicants for this grant are public entities, including states and local governments, transit agencies, port authorities, and this is the City of Wilmington's first RAISE grant. And eligible projects are $5 million for a minimum award, meaning that this RAISE grant has a preference for larger infrastructure transportation projects, which include highway, bridge, road improvements, public transportation improvements, improvements to rail and ports. And I took together a series of 3 projects from around the nation that were funded during this round, just to demonstrate which projects typically get awarded. So if you can proceed to the next slide. So this slide is a transit center that's being developed by the City of Charlotte that has an estimated total project cost of $85 million and a grant funding amount of $15 million. Next slide. And next is a Washington, D.C. bridge and road improvement project, which covers a 2-mile corridor, has a total project cost of $72 million and grant funding amount of $15 million from the RAISE grant. And next slide. And then this next slide is a project in Detroit, building a new rail and bus station total project costs are $57 million, grant funding are $10 million. And I wanted to highlight these projects because it gets to a major point of evaluation for these projects is what they call project readiness. And we learned this term while, you can stay in the previous slide, but we learned this term while going through the application process 3 times and getting feedback. For project readiness, they look for what other sources of funding does this project have? How is this project feasible from a technical standpoint? And what are the environmental risks? So luckily, we've been able to get support from the state of Delaware, from DelDOT, and the Riverfront Development Corporation to create a compelling project that the U.S. Department of Transportation deems project ready. So that was kind of just a background on what this RAGE grant is about.
Thank you. Could you both please state your name for the record? I should have said that from the beginning. I'm sorry.
Apologies. My name is Sean Park. I am the Deputy Director for the Office of Economic Development, and I'm joined by
Jeff Flynn, Director of Economic Development. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, I want to start out by thanking you for looking for grants. I mean, City Council has been talking about this on a regular basis about individuals in the city of Wilmington looking for some grants that would assist with our residents with the city of Wilmington, and not always, you know, you hear about the state with this grant or the federal with these various grants, but you don't hear about some of our city employees just sitting down, researching for grants that's available to help out the city of Wilmington. So I think this was a very good move for you to take the time, and hopefully you continue to look for some grants that will help out our residents. Do we have any council members with any questions?
I have my hand up, Chair.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilman.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was just going to congratulate the Office of Economic Development for landing this grant. You know, getting these grants, I know, is very difficult. So congratulations. And is the money in these grants to improve infrastructure for upcoming businesses in those areas? The 7th Street Peninsula and the other Market Street, I think.
Not this.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So-
Sean, you can answer that. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the project site is actually along South Market Street. So starting from where the Christina River is down to around Howard Street, a little bit below that. But the intent is to kind of extend the city grid and add 8 new city blocks to South Market Street, do some remediation work on that plot of land, as well as create additional pedestrian and bicyclist connections, and add a few more traffic stops along South Market Street to stop the high-speed flow of cars throughout that area to improve the safety of this region.
Thank you. My other question is very similar. It's not really a question, but very similar to what Chair Oliver said. I'm very interested in that you found this grant. Did the department look for it, or do you have a grant writer?
So we, just being in the economic development business, if you will, over time we become aware of these grants that are offered on an annual basis. And actually, a good source of information about grants is called a NOFA, which is I think it's I forget
the funding opportunity.
It's called a Notice of Funding Opportunities. And we subscribe to these listservs that bring these to our attention. And so
Thank you. That's very useful. And of course, I can go on the internet and find it, correct?
Yeah, you can. There's a federal register of grants. And I think we can, tomorrow we'll send you the link.
Okay, thank you very much.
Certainly.
Do we have any more questions from the council members? Okay, seeing no hands, do we have any questions from anyone from the public? Okay, this will also be on February the 3rd's agenda. Some people outside in their cars with the music blasting. Okay, next we go to our next resolution, which is the resolution approving the Office of Economic Development to accept a grant from Transportation Infrastructure Investment Fund to support infrastructure improvements on 7th Street Peninsula. And that's where I met you, and I met you guys today with a group of investors here in the city of Wilmington who are trying to expand their businesses and it's their business. And I thought it went very well. Someone here to speak regarding this grant that's, and kudos to you again, Sean, for taking the time to sit down and look for some of these grants. Thanks a lot. So someone speak towards this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Both Jeff Lynn and I will speak on this resolution. So if WITN can pull up the PowerPoint for this, it's the second half. Yes, exactly. So this is a fund launched by the state of Delaware in July 2019, the Transportation Infrastructure Investment Fund, otherwise known as TIF. And the way this fund works is the state will fund infrastructure improvements if it can tie into a business bringing new jobs to the state of Delaware. And so let's go to the next slide. So both Jeff Lynn and I identified 2 businesses coming to the 7th Street Peninsula that will bring new jobs to the state, and there was a clear need for infrastructure improvements along this peninsula. So we connected the dots, and we thought these were good candidates for this fund. So the first company is Light Action Productions, which will bring in 80 new jobs or retained jobs to the state, and they were awarded for $3.6 million in infrastructure improvements. And next slide, please. And then the second business is the Challenge Program, which will bring in 19 jobs to the state, and they were awarded a little over $1 million in infrastructure investments. And let's go to the next slide. And our office assisted these 2 businesses in applying for the fund by using a study that we helped fund in 2019 through WilMAPCO, Wilmington Initiatives, and DelDOT, which is called the East 7th Street Peninsula Study. And this is available on WilMAPCO's website. But they studied this particular area that's identified in the study area. It's the 7th Street Peninsula. And they conducted a series of studies. Let's go to the next slide. Documenting the flooding along this peninsula and areas that need improvement for the infrastructure and which roads need to be elevated. Let's go to the next slide. So ultimately, they came up with this overall plan for the infrastructure improvements on the peninsula, and we prioritized certain immediate action items, which were to elevate the 7th Street Road and install drainage in order for the existing 10 businesses and roughly 150 employees to access their facilities, and then for these 2 new businesses to access their facilities as well. And let's go to the next slide. And these improvements are quite expensive. You can look at the orange arrow that says 7th Street improvements is estimated at $6.4 million. And before this TIF fund, the city actually didn't identify where this funding would come from other than maybe in 2026 with the some capital transportation investment dollars from DelDOT. But Jeff and I were able to connect the dots and win this award through the state's TIF Council, which we presented in Dover in, I believe that was August of last summer. We were awarded these grant funds, but again, we didn't execute on the agreements, and we didn't want to do that prior to coming in front of the committee and the council. So the improvements will be to elevate the 7th Street Road and then install drainage, and there's some design work that needs to happen before construction begins. So that's the general gist of this fund.
Thank you. Do we have any council members that have any questions? Do we have anyone from the?
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure. I'm sorry, Nathan. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. I have a question. I really appreciate the proactive research on a specific region of the city and seeking out a grant for it kind of on your own as an Office of Economic Development. Can you touch on how often you do that? And are there other examples of proactively applying for grants and sort of targeting neighborhoods and saying, we're going to go out and apply for a grant and then go for it?
Yeah, sure. What comes to mind first would be the Wilmington Initiatives, which is that's a moniker to a group of departments in the city that work with Wilmapco and the state of Delaware, really our Department of Planning. So this is a group that brings ideas for neighborhood transportation improvements that are, say, under $1 million, and organizes them and delivers them for consideration by the state CTF, the Community Transportation Fund. So oftentimes in our neighborhoods, if you see a sidewalk improvement, or the NPCs use this funding a lot. So what we do is we monitor the Wilmington Initiatives list, which compiles all the requests from our neighborhoods. And when we see something on that list, especially if it dovetails with a business we're working with, we look for a way to connect the dots and maybe accelerate a project that's on the list, or maybe go to the community and say, hey, have you considered this? So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Brownfield grants are something that we've utilized in this office for a long time. Of course, they're only available to the owner of the brownfield, and obviously, Councilman Field, you're aware of these grants. But I think there's probably some other ones that don't come to mind, and when they do tonight, I'll email you tomorrow. But we generally look for, we become aware of these grants at the federal and the state level, and also the foundation level, and then we just wait for the right time to go after them, because they usually need some sort of something to kickstart them, like a business investment or a problem. And oftentimes having the plan from the planning department ready to go helps justify and make our application strong.
Thank you. Councilman Fields, is that all?
Yes, thank you for that answer.
No problem.
That's all.
Do we have any other council members that like to ask a question? I see Councilwoman Fields.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to know, for the infrastructure grant, you got it for the riverfront in that area. What about the inner city? Because we have a lot of buses coming up and down 4th Street, which is the 4th Street corridor. How did you incorporate that, or how could you incorporate it? Or if not, could you possibly see if there is a grant? Because we have a lot of businesses on 4th Street. We have corner stores, we have a gas station, we have restaurants and different things like that. So these are small business owners that's pouring back into the community. So I just want to know, like, how can we get a grant for those? Because you have the sidewalks, you have the bus stops on the same streets as well. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the approach, first off, I think there's an existing streetscape plan for that corridor. And give me a moment, please, Councilwoman. I'm sorry, it escapes my name, but there's a plan for 4th Street. And remember, some council people will remember the planning grants that the private sector, the blueprint communities, sorry. It took me a while, but I'm thinking of the blueprint communities. So they're a great set of plans, and what we should do is take a look at the blueprint community plan and look for the issues that were raised in the plan. So, for example, there happens to be a grant out right now from the Volkswagen settlement that the state of Delaware manages this grant, and they look for proposals. And I'm just brainstorming here. Uses might be to convert buses that use diesel engines to electric engines. I know that that's an allowable use of funds. So, we would look for an intersection there if, say, the buses are noisy and, disrupting people's life. Like that's sort of how we look for the opportunities. But for the businesses, so it's important to remember this TIF product that you heard about, those dollars can only be spent in the public right-of-way or right in the front of the business. It's really designed for businesses that have a driveway. I think for the types of community-based businesses that you're asking about, we would look for more community transportation dollars to fix or repair sidewalks. But I would also say that I'd like to meet with you and identify the businesses along 4th Street corridor that we will go and meet with those businesses and talk about some of the ARPA funds. So if you could please maybe reach out to Daniel and ask him to set up a meeting, we'd be happy to talk to you further.
Thank you very much.
These transportation grants, they may not be a good fit for the community businesses. It's not a good fit. These are big dollars. We'd have to have a $5 million project minimum.
Got you. Well, thank you so much for answering my question. And I really appreciate you just saying you may not have anything, but we can look into it and probably try to find something. So I just appreciate that. And I will definitely ask Daniel to give you a call so that we can set up a meeting. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, Councilwoman Fields. Would that be all?
That's it, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any, see, no other hands. Do we have anyone from the public that would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing no hands, this will also be on the agenda for February the 3rd. And I would like to thank Economic Development. I would like to thank your staff from Economics Development Department. Jeff, thank you so much. And Sean, thank you for your presentations. As I stated before, this will be on the agenda for February the 3rd. And if there's no additional questions, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
So
Move. Second.
It's been so moved and second. The meeting for Public Works and Transportation Committee for Wednesday, January the 19th is over.
thank you, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.